Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today and appreciate your interest in the Returning Residents Clean Jobs Training Program. So just to summarize program real quick, the goal is to provide training to people in the custody of Illinois Department of Corrections to prepare them for entry-level clean energy jobs. Program will operate out of 4 Department of Corrections facilities: Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center, Western Illinois Correctional Center, Decatur Correctional Center, Vienna Correctional Center. And the first round of applications are due April 15th. Depending on what happens with that first round of applicants, there may or may not be additional rounds. So if you want to be considered, your best bet is to get in by that first round. We anticipate this is a $6 million per year program. Funding awards of $1 to $2.5 million per year, and there will be up to 4 awards, 1 at each facility, and there will be 2 12-month renewals based on grantee performance. So as the title slide said, this is about preparing effective proposals, and that's the focus of the conversation today. There was a previous webinar from March 1, and that had lots of information on detailed review of program elements and requirements and eligibility. This webinar is not going to focus to the same extent on those details, but instead the focus is on how to prepare you for a successful proposal. And we have up here the merit review criteria, and the idea is that preparing a successful proposal, when you have a successful proposal, you're going to be meeting the merit review criteria and scoring highly on those categories. And so we're going to go through some strategies and tips on how you can do well in communicating clearly your team's qualifications and your capacities, how your vision for what you want to bring aligns with the program requirements and eligibility. I just wanted to introduce a couple of people on the webinar today. We have Larry Dawson with us. He's one of the CEJA regional administrators. And we also have Linda Larson at the Clean Jobs Institute at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. They may jump in from time to time if they have something to add or questions to respond to. And we also have Devin Day at the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, who will be responding to questions. My name is Todd Rusk. I am at the University of Illinois. I'm at the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center. Some housekeeping. We're going to ask everyone to stay muted during the presentations. You can ask questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that and responding to those questions when we're able to. Otherwise, we will respond to those questions later. Maybe we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end, and so we can take that. And this is being recorded right now, so we'll post it on the web page. Anything we can't get to today, we will post answers to those questions later. So here's what we want to talk about today. So with effective grant writing, one of the key things is to know the resources that are available. So I want to review those quickly. I'm going to talk about the merit review process, and then some of what merit reviewers look for, some proposal tips. Okay, so resources and additional technical assistance that can be helpful for you, the applicants. Hopefully you have already been to and seen the web page for this notice of funding opportunity. Uh, we have these key items. So you want to download and review the NOFO supplement. That is the document that defines the program. It describes it, all the rules and the eligibility. The Clean Jobs curriculum provides information about the training and education requirements for this program. And the application materials and templates are all the kinds of things that you're going to need to be filling out, downloading and completing and submitting with your complete application package. So you should review all of those things carefully. Um, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. There was a bidders conference, a technical assistance webinar that was on March 1st, last week. On the website, we have a video and slides available, so you can view those again. That was a deeper dive on the program requirements and eligibility. Another resource to look at, all the lead applicants must be pre-qualified. So the DCEO website has resources and information on how you can get pre-qualified. That's the kind of thing you want to do sooner rather than later. Sometimes the pre-qualification steps can take a little bit of time, so you want to do that as soon as possible. Some other resources, networking events. These are opportunities for you to find potential partners. Who else is out there in the field? If your team is, if you're looking to build out your team, add some capacity, add some skills. These are some events that might be helpful for you. And then finally, another resource on the NOFO webpage, we've got a link, a link for submitting NOFO questions. There's ceo.ceja at illinois.gov, and then we have a link for a Q&A document that is a list of all the questions and responses that have come in. And then finally, we have a link where you can sign up to get technical assistance from one of our CEJA NOFO coaches. If you have a question about eligibility, about program requirements, you want somebody to take a look at your application and offer some tips, look at your budget template. Those are all different kinds of things that you can get with a CEJA NOFO coach. Okay, so the merit review process. So you prepare and submit an application, and the first thing that's going to happen is that your application materials are going to be reviewed to see if your application is complete, if you are in fact an eligible applicant. If you pass all of those screens, then you go into the merit review, and your application is reviewed for the merit review criteria that are described in the NOFO. So this first step, did you turn in your application on time? We have our deadlines so that you can be included in that first round of reviews. And NOFO section D4 gives you information on submitting the application. Again, We've got more information in the NOFO about if you're an eligible applicant, if you're GATA pre-qualified. And the slide here shows NOFO Section 3. Section C, excuse me, has information on eligibility, and NOFO Section D3 has information on the unique entity identifier and system for award management. And then all of the required elements of the application package, those are listed in NOFO Section D2. And those, you can also find links for those on the NOFO website. So again, if you do not pass this step, your proposal will not be reviewed for merit. So make sure to check all of these boxes and make sure you have a complete application package and that you understand eligibility. Okay, so this is what a complete application package looks like. There's a uniform grant application. That is a fillable PDF. There's a uniform budget template. That's an Excel spreadsheet. There's conflict of interest and other mandatory disclosures. The program application is a Word template document where you fill in the blanks and provide your responses. That is the narrative document where you are proposing your team and you are describing the merits of your team and your approach to satisfying the requirements of the program. And then there are other supplemental project documents that you will have to attach. So those are all you can find and download from the Notice of Funding Opportunity webpage. So then after the administrative review to check your application and your eligibility, then it goes through a merit review process. And this is to evaluate the what you put in your proposal documents, your application and your budget. This is to evaluate it against the evaluation criteria, the applicant qualifications and capacity, cost effectiveness, the quality of the plan, and the documentation of need. So we have a team of merit reviewers that are appointed and trained to go through this. They will all review and discuss as a team. And then there's a process by which the final scores are determined and the selections go from there. So all of this to say is that this is, what you're trying to do is convince a team of merit reviewers based on what you put in your application materials that your team will successfully deliver all of the program elements and meet all of the program requirements. That's really the job, is convincing the reviewers that you have what it takes, and that is reflected by achieving high scores in all of those merit review criteria. And the way that you accomplish that is your application will clearly document how your team, your project plan, and your budget reflect the merit review criteria. So you will have an effective proposal if you are understanding the requirements and you're understanding what the merit reviewers are looking for, and then your application materials clearly, explicitly, and specifically meet all of those requirements. So to go step by step through each of these, we'll go through each of those merit review categories. And before we jump into that, I wanted to, since I mentioned there was the bidders conference webinar on March 1st, there were some strategies and suggestions in that presentation about preparing an effective proposal. So I wanted to pull out a few highlights from that webinar. So you want to respond to the content of the NOFO. This isn't the best opportunity to be creative and think outside of the box. You are very much trying to describe, the program is pretty much laid out what the department wants. So you are showing how you're going to do that. And so really stick with the structure and the review criteria, and that will be your best bet to having a successful proposal. You do have opportunity and space to tell your story, to highlight your experiences, your qualifications, and what is it that is special about your team, that your connection to the populations that you are serving, and your experience offering training programs. You want to tell your story in a way that fits in and really highlights the strengths of your team. And then, think about your staffing budget and partnerships and how all of those kind of round out a team that is qualified and convinces the merit reviewers that you are the team that can deliver on this returning residence program. So the notice of funding opportunity supplement contains the program requirements, and that shows what you are required to do. And so the job of your application and your proposal materials is to discuss how you're going to do that and how you are the best qualified to do that. And so you draw from your experience to lay that out in the application form. So you want to, so who can apply? So this is the eligible applicants. So these are community-based organizations that provide employment, skill development, or related services. This can include community colleges, not-for-profits, and local governments, and organizations that have a history of serving committed persons or justice-involved persons. So make sure that you are an eligible applicant. And if you are not, maybe you can participate on a team with somebody who is an eligible lead applicant. So build your team. You can apply as a single organization, or you can apply as a team, but collectively your team has to show that you can effectively serve returning residents, that you can work with employers, and that you can document that you have agreements with employers for job placement and on-job training, that you have the ability to provide training within a correctional facility setting using the Clean Energy Jobs curriculum framework, and that you have the capacity to provide supportive services and transition services for your program participants while they're inside the correctional setting and when they have been released and they are on the outside. Or you have to show how, if they're released to an area that is outside of your service region, how you can refer and connect them to services that will be supportive of them. So go to the NOFO website. There's a recording of the webinar. The slides are available. You should make use of those resources. Okay, so now let's go into the merit review criteria and talk about what merit reviewers look for when evaluating applications. These are the different criteria: applicant team qualifications and capacity, documentation of need, project quality and integration, cost effectiveness and return on investment. And you see percentage values here. That is the percent weight of each of those categories in your scoring. So these all add up to 100%. So you can see that they all, the project quality and integration and team qualifications and capacity, those are the biggest and the most important. But really, you're competing with your peers, and you're also trying to demonstrate to the reviewers that you are a good team for this program. So you need to do your best in all those categories. If you lose 5 or 10% on the scoring, that can mean the difference between that can mean the difference between, beating out another eligible applicant, and it can also mean the difference of achieving the minimum threshold score to even be considered for award. Some general do's and don'ts. Make sure you have all of the required elements. You can't really pick and choose between the required elements. If it's there, if it's a must, if it's a shall, you have to address it. Follow the application instructions. Details and examples. So when you provide sufficient detail, and when you have specific examples, those are the kinds of things that give the merit reviewers confidence that you know what you're talking about. That's when it starts to become convincing that you have the experience, that you have the right idea. When applications are too vague, or they don't have enough details, that's when it starts to get, as a merit reviewer, it we start to wonder if the applicant really has thought the program through, if they have the experience. And then there are a number of documents that you're going to have to submit with your package. So we know that when you're developing an application, they go through iterations and multiple drafts, and you've got multiple documents. So it's really important for your quality control, to make sure that as you progress through all of these different documents, that as you update, let's say, your application document, that it still aligns with what you have in your budget, that it still aligns with what is reflected in some of the other attachments. So as your quality control, make sure that all of the documents are aligned with each other. In this last do, I want to emphasize all the required elements of the curriculum framework. In another merit review process, I noticed a lot of applications. So like in the curriculum framework, there's a bridge program, and there's also the clean energy training programs. And I noticed a lot of applicants were not including the bridge program, or they were not including certain required clean energy training programs. So those are all required. So you can't pick and choose between those things. So make sure you have the bridge program, and you have all the required clean energy training program requirements. Don't go off on your own, idea. I think the application form, it's a fill in the blank type of document. So hopefully that helps you from going too far astray. But really, the requirements are presented to you. So just meet those requirements and document specifically how you're going to do that. I have to do a lot of work with proposals, and so I try to reuse content when possible. It's a thing that many of us do, but you have to be careful to make sure that the application that you're putting forward is actually reflected, and that you don't have all these strange references that don't make sense because you weren't careful on cleaning up maybe some old material. So be careful if you are repurposing old content. Don't propose services or training that is out of scope, and don't propose things that you're not adequately detailing on how you're going to do it. Okay, some things that we really like to see, again, specific examples and strategies. We like clear descriptions so that we can look at the program requirements and the merit review criteria on one hand, and then we can look at your application document, and we can look at your other materials and see how the requirements and the goals are reflected in what you are submitting. So the more that you can have a one-to-one correspondence between what is required and what the reviewers are seeing in the application, the better and the smoother path you're having to have a solid merit review. We like to see, references to best practices or existing programs. That is a reflection of your experience, your expertise, and your qualifications. So when you incorporate those kinds of things, those are things that give confidence to merit reviewers that you understand the field, and that you know how to deliver these programs because you have experience, because you're aware of what's going on in literature, what's going on in the field. And we also like to see, it's not required that you have a multi-organizational team, but it does inspire confidence when you have a robust set of partnerships with multiple strengths from multiple partners, all combining into a team and perhaps a set of outside supportive stakeholders that are all pushing towards this goal. Okay, so to get into the first of four categories on the merit review. So this is a cut and paste from the section of the NOFO that talks about the merit review criteria. So I've highlighted some of the things that we really key in on in the merit review. And so we have this whole category adds up to 35%. And so each of those individual lines, those all add up to 35 points. So if as you're putting together your application, you can start, keeping track of your points. Maybe you can do your own assessment of where you are. Are you ticking off all of the boxes in these items? You want to be able to talk specifically about each of these criteria if you want to get full points in the merit review on the qualifications and capacity. So, obviously with the returning residence program, you have to show that you have a history of working with the target population, incarcerated people or justice impacted people. Doing the training, certification, job readiness, providing transition and follow-up services to help people along in this process. That you have knowledge of experience in the clean energy industry. This is a clean energy program. So your understanding of that will be important to show with your qualifications and capacity. So you're trying to show that you have the capacity to do all of these things. And I guess the other thing is that it is required that you assign that describe your program administrator and their qualifications. So you want to make sure that you have that person already in mind. With some proposals, you can have positions where not everybody is yet hired, not everybody is yet named. With a position as important as the program administrator, the resume and the history and track record of that program administrator, that will be an important part of your application package. So if you don't have that person specifically named and really demonstrating that they have the qualifications, that will be a serious weakness in a proposal. So you want to convince the reviewers that your team and your key staff are qualified and that you have what it takes to deliver everything. Uh, when you have partners, subcontractors, when you have employers or other organizations that are agreeing to hire or provide work-based learning, you're going to want to have memorandum of understanding. We get a lot of questions about that, so I have a few slides that will talk a little bit more about memorandum of understanding in a little bit here. So we need resumes of the key staff. You want to describe your experiences of the lead and the partners. And again, you know, the more specific that you can be, the better, because those are, again, you're trying to convince you know, a panel of reviewers. You can't assume that they know you. They can't, you can't assume that, you know, your organization's name alone is going to be sufficient, or that your, you know, that your reputation, really, you're being evaluated for what you put in the application. And then, you know, I mentioned that sometimes, you know, sometimes it's okay to not have every position named or hired. If you have some positions that are to be hired, it is a good practice to include a job description as part of that. That helps the reviewers understand what that person is going to be doing, how it fits into the team. But a caution is that if you have too many gaps, too many that are indicated as to be hired, then that might lead the reviewers to question your capacity. So it's okay to have some, but if you have too many, that can look like maybe you don't, you know, maybe you're not quite ready. So we look for experience and qualifications. We look for your capacity and ability. So all these questions and bullet points up here, these are the kinds of topics that you're going to detail in your application. So you want to be clear and succinct, and specific. So these are all the kinds of things that you're going to go into to demonstrate your qualifications and capacity. Uh, Sometimes we get questions, people wondering how do they find partners and employers? How can they build out their team, or how can they you know, get into partnerships with employers that might hire some of some of the trainees and participants that come out of their programs. So again, we have the networking sessions. So you should look for that information, because those kinds of folks will be attending. And then you can also look at at our partnering list. There's a link where you can find the partnering list. There's some training providers and there are some employers in there. So think about things like, you know, who might be able to help you with work-based learning, and who might be some employers that could be outlets for employment for people coming out of your program. You know, we want to provide this training so that people can find their way to a job. And so that, you know, that process of it is not just a training program. We're wanting to get people to that place where they have a job, and the employer partnerships are really important. That is a weakness that I have seen in merit reviews, where there are just not enough, there's not enough demonstration, or not enough memorandum of understanding with employers. So it just wasn't clear that they had the strength of the relationships with employers who could help them out with jobs afterwards. So the memorandum of understanding, you know, why do we want that? Why do we require that? You know, they're a document that set the stage for an effective partnership between the applicant, or I guess in this case, the grantee and a partner. So that could be an employer partner, that could be a subcontractor who is providing services under the program. So it documents a relationship and the expectations. So it has a use and a function between those two parties, but then also for the sake of your application, it's worth points because it inspires confidence in the merit reviewers. If you are talking about partnerships, subcontract relationships, employers, but you don't have a documentation through like a memorandum of understanding, then it's hard to take that as seriously if it's not documented. So the MOU, you might have partnerships, but if you don't have that documented, then you can lose those points. So we need to see those things to be able to trust that it's actually a credible partnership. So what is it? It's a statement of commitment between the two parties, and it describes the terms of that engagement. So you want to include information about the project and the purpose and the reason for the partnership. Who is doing what? What are people responsible for? What's your understanding between the two partners? Um, what are the reporting requirements? And signatures and date. It seems obvious, but I've reviewed applications where the memorandum of understanding isn't signed, and so that's not a complete document, and so it wasn't as credible. So you make sure you just cover all of those bases. We have a template for a memorandum of understanding on the NOFO webpage. So, encourage you to download and use this template um, for your MOUs with your partners for this project. So just, real quick, I think I have like 3 slides on this. It just shows all the different sections, but it just shows who is involved in this partnership. What are the activities? The background. Why are we doing this? What's the story here? The purpose, intent, and that's where we start getting into the goals, and what kinds of requirements are we looking for. We document the responsibilities, who is responsible for what, um, reporting, progress, and metrics, how those things are going to happen. How are you going to coordinate with each other? This could be, we're going to have weekly meetings. We have a monthly meeting. Um, you could have some other way, but you document how your activities are coordinated. If you don't have coordination between two parties, that's not really a partnership. It's just multiple organizations off doing their own thing. It's a partnership in this context if it's coordinated and it's clear that you're working together in a coordinated fashion. And then, an agreement like this has to, get into the funding and who's getting paid for what. And signatures of the key representatives and dated, and just, get that part done. Okay, documentation of need. So again, this is the merit review table. These are the criteria that are listed in the NOFO. So we've got these 3 categories. We want to see that you have a plan to address barriers that returning residents face, a plan to address the challenges that and concerns that employers will face in hiring those folks. And then what's the impact of the project on the people being trained and the communities that are impacted. So you need to be able to address these in your application. So what are you trying to convince the reviewers of? That that you understand what the needs and the barriers are, and that you have a plan. So that's how you can, that's how you can satisfy the section of the merit review. What is your plan? How are you going to, so once you understand what the barriers and problems and the needs are, then you can talk about your plan, and how are you going to do that in the course of delivering your work. Um, if you're planning to apply for this, the chances are what the barriers are and what you would do. So now you have to put that into the application document. Um, if you have, again, understanding the barriers or needs, you can show that you have some awareness of the social and the economic conditions of the areas where people in the program that you're proposing to run, where those people are going to be released to. So, this comes back to your experience and your qualifications, but, highlight things about your experience that, what is it about your team? What is it about your experience that informs your understanding of the barriers and needs? And what is it, what's in your experience that informs, like, how does that translate into the plan that you have? Why is your plan special? What's that based on, to address those needs and those barriers? So, it also helps if you can include some quantitative information to document those barriers and needs. So you have the target population, you've got documentation to show that um, you've got documentation to support what you're saying about the needs and the problems. And so what you can do is, so here are some sources you can go to find data and statistics and other kinds of information that might be able to help support your story. Again, these are things that help inspire the confidence of the merit reviewers. If you're making claims about barriers and needs, if you're able to document and cite other sources and statistics, that inspires confidence in the merit reviewers and translates into points in your application scoring. Okay, so this project quality and integration, this is the category of merit review that has to do with um, the description of your plan, um, related to all of the required elements of the program. So this is the part about delivering all the services, um, doing the training, providing the wraparound services. So this is how you talk about your plan. What's involved in delivering this program, and how are you going to do that? So, and how is the big question here. So again, this is the table from the merit review criteria from the NOFO. I've highlighted some of the areas that, if I was a merit reviewer, I would be keying in on some of these highlighted areas. So again, think about all of these categories. Make sure you are writing information that helps you're writing in your application in a way that satisfies all of these requirements, because these are what the merit reviewers are going to be looking for and scoring you on. In the end, you're trying to convince the reviewers that your program that your team can deliver a program that meets the goals. So, the goals are to increase access and opportunities for training in the clean energy industry for returning residents, helping them succeed in the labor market, and preparing them for clean energy jobs, and supporting returning residents and retaining employment and growing their careers after release. So that's the big picture goal of this program. Um, so you want to make sure that you are aligned with those goals, um, and then and then you also have to show how you're meeting the requirements on all the program elements and the different detail activities that are required. So I'm not going to read all of these, but these are the questions that are up here on the slide are the kinds of these are the kinds of information and things that you want to respond to in your application when you're talking about the project and how you are going to deliver all the required program elements and services. So these are all the required elements. You want to convince the merit reviewers that you can deliver all of these programs. So in your application, you're going to be talking about how you're going to be delivering all the required elements, like, gaining entry into the program and delivering the training services and supporting people, how you are going to provide a culture of equity, and how how you're going to coordinate among your team and with the other CEJA programs. So this is the part, you don't get to pick and choose between these things. You have to do all of them, and you have to show how you're going to do these things in order to demonstrate and convince the reviewers that you can be successful in delivering all of these elements. So we get a question, how can, when we talk about coordination with other CEJA grantees, this is the returning residence program is one of a suite of a system of other CEJA programs. There's the workforce hubs, there's the navigators, there's the pre-apprenticeship program, and there's more. And those programs don't all, many of them aren't yet operating, they don't have grantees, and so we get a question, how can I propose, how I'm going to partner with them? They haven't been selected yet. So, the suggestion is that you can describe that you intend to collaborate with them, and hopefully from your experience, you have in your history some ideas on ways that you can collaborate and coordinate with partners outside of your team for the good of the whole program and for the whole system. So give some examples on how you might do that, even if you don't know who they are right now. So cost effectiveness and return on investment. This is about your budget and the cost of your project. This is the fourth and last section of the merit review criteria. This is the table that appears in the NOFO. These are the categories that the merit reviewers are looking at. So I really want to focus in on those three words highlighted there: thoroughness, reasonableness, and necessity. So, in your budgets, we want to see that you have quantified and documented costs in a way that is, reasonably thorough. It makes sense, and it is clearly necessary for delivering the work. So we want to see that you have a well-documented budget and that the numbers make sense. And then it also, the second category, leveraging existing programs. This is where if you have other sources of funding that are contributing to the program, that's an example of leveraging other programs or services. So what that means is that you're extending the value of the funding coming from DCEO for the returning residence program. So that would be a thing in your favor. It's not required that you have that, but if you can bring those outside resources, that is something that helps. And then, we indicate long-term sustainability. We want to see that this isn't, the idea is that these programs are going to continue for a long time. And so when we're reviewing our applications, we want to get a sense that this is a long-term, durable type of approach and not just a one-off, I'm here for a couple of years and then we're gone. So to when we're reviewing, to convince the reviewers about your budget, we need to see that your budget template is reasonably is detailed. You can't go down, there's only so far of a level that you can go. But I can think about budgets that I've reviewed where there was a budget line that was like $500,000 for equipment. And that was all it said. There was no breakdown. And so that it is not an example of adequately detailed. If we're going to have large expenses, we need to understand what they are, and there needs to be some breakout. That inspires confidence in the reviewers that you understand what is involved in this program if you can break down the costs. So we want to see that you have an adequate and a reasonable breakdown in your budget, that it is justified. There are narrative elements in the budget spreadsheet template. So that's a place where you can show your work and explain where numbers came from. And then there's also places in the program application where you can explain aspects of the budget. So you want those two things to align with each other. But really, we're looking to see that the budget is detailed so that that we know your numbers are coming from somewhere and they're not just made up. If we don't have a lot of background information, if we don't have a good breakdown, then we don't really know if you're just making up numbers or if it's coming from something that is well thought out and well detailed and well justified. So that's the job for getting a good score on your cost effectiveness and return on investment. Your budget spreadsheet and the budget narrative sections within that spreadsheet and the narrative sections in your application document. So sometimes people wonder, what is cost efficiency and what is cost effectiveness? Sometimes it's a little bit hard to understand in terms of when we have qualitative programs like this. But what we're looking for are these questions. Do you provide enough detail? Do we know how you calculated your costs? Do you have explanations so that when we're reviewing it, we can understand that what you're putting down is reasonable and necessary? There is a section in the application that asks for an analysis of cost efficiency. All you have to do is fill out that section. A lot of times it talks about uh, that analysis. A lot of times what we like to see is the like if we're talking about what's the total program cost per student. So if you're requesting $2 million and you have X number of participants coming through that program, then your analysis of cost efficiency would be we have average X dollars per training participant. That would be a kind of analysis that reviewers like to see. They can obviously do the math, but we're in that process, we're not supposed to be doing that for you. We want to see what do you have in your application. We're not doing your math for you. So the budget template, it's a standard template. There's a lot of information in there. Some of the things may not apply to you. There is help and support if there are things in the budget template that you don't understand, that you don't know how to use. Um, and then, with the budget, this happens with a lot of us. You submit your proposal, you submit your budget. If you get selected, the budget that you requested may not be what you end up getting. So, you can anticipate a negotiation. Sometimes things will change. And then, don't forget the budget narrative. Make sure your budget numbers and your story are in alignment with each other. So these are all different elements that show up in the budget cap. Need to start thinking about all of these things and how they apply to your project and to your budget. Explain your numbers. We've got, as I said, there's lots of tabs in the budget spreadsheet that correspond to, there's a tab for personnel expenses, there's a tab for uh, equipment, there's a tab for supplies. So make sure you're putting all of the right expenses in the right tabs of the budget spreadsheet. And then just remember, take advantage of those sections of the template where you can provide some written documentation, some justification that allows you to show your work and explain how you arrived at the numbers that you did. So here are some examples of how you can, how you can justify equipment or how you can justify some of your expenses. When you have, for example, in your personnel, you can list the personnel and their positions, a brief description of why that's necessary. Um, with consultants or contractors, what are they bringing, and why do you need that? With equipment, list out what the, if it's list out what the equipment is. How did you get the pricing information? Those kinds of things. There are budget and grant resources available. So here are a couple of links that you can look for. I want to remind you again, April 15th is your important date to get your application in for that first round of reviews. And again, if you have questions, you can send them to ceo.ceja@illinois.gov. We put all of the questions that come in and all the answers that come in up on a Q&A document, so you can find it there on the NOFO webpage.